What's the biggest thing missing from the video game industry today?
Hi, I'm Nathan Humphrey. I'm a concept artist and I've been illustrating since I can remember. I also have been playing video games since I can remember, and most importantly, I've been walking with the Lord and worshiping Jesus Christ since I can remember. Growing up and engaging in multiple media, I always found a plethora of Christian content when it came to books, songs, and even movies. However, when that love for video games, for Halo, for Zelda, for Mario, for Hollow Knight, finally crossed paths with my Christian values, I realized that there is not a lot of Christian media to be found. I realized that there's a huge missed opportunity in the mission field when it comes to video games. When you think of the amount of players overseas, people who don't have access to the Bible and all this stuff, I started to really think about how Christian games could impact the ministry field and the video game industry. And that's when I started to think, what would it look like to have Christian-themed video games? So, despite many hours given to my corporate day job to put food on the table, me and a few of my friends are coming together to try to make this dream a reality, to try to make a Christian-themed game that is objectively good.
In this video, I just want to give you a glimpse into the world that I'm creating for this game. When designing this concept, I knew I wanted it to be a fleshed out, lore-filled fantasy world. And in fact, I had some ideas that were so ambitious we knew we'd need to leave aside for a later project. We knew we needed our first game to be small in scope and yet have a very satisfying, repeatable game loop that the player could enjoy. And I didn't want there to be a disconnect from the gameplay and the story. So when thinking about the lore of the world, the design that it would have, I started to think about a story, a narrative, a premise that would attach itself, that would set up this gameplay system that we were looking for. And that's when I started to get ideas that I liked. The world for our first game takes place in the ethereal kingdom known as Agathon. The capital of Agathon, which will function as the hub for the player, resides on the edge of the made world, overlooking an endless gathering of clouds and mist. Agathon is a kingdom filled with intrinsic beauty, reverence, and splendor. The buildings are carved in a blend of Gothic and Greek architecture, with lush vegetation and shimmering gold accents adorning every structure. Overruling Agathon and all that has been made is the great Forge Master, the King. I haven't landed on a name for him just yet, but I do have a few ideas. The King is the source of light for Agathon and all of its citizens. The strike of his hammer molds the very earth, and the heat of his flame brings forth life. To Agathons, he is both mystifying and intimate, but is in every way awe-inspiring. Under the King's direction and empowerment, the kingdom is protected by a host of golden knights known as ambassadors. These warriors are fierce and valiant with an undying fidelity to their great Forge Master. These knights are pivotal to Agathon's survival, because the kingdom has been at war since the memory of man. A force of abysmal darkness that has never known light festers and writhes. If not eradicated, the spread of shadow will bring Agathon to ruin. However, these opposed powers exist on different planes of reality, meaning this eternal crusade has not been waged on an open battlefield. Instead, ambassadors must journey across the land to naturally formed towers known as pillars. These pillars are punctures through the plane of reality that create an entry point to the accursed depths. Like molten lava bursting through the formation of a volcano, the spewing shadow erupts through the pillars. Only an ambassador may descend the tower and vanquish that which is not made.
Earlier in the video, I mentioned how I wanted the world's story and lore to be the foundation for the core game mechanics. And I think that's really important because, especially with how small of a game we're trying to make, if the lore just felt like info dumping or something not important to the actual gameplay that the player would experience, I feel like it would be a lot harder for the player to care about the world and the setting of the world. Here's just the first introduction to what the game mechanics will actually look like, why I believe they're unique, and why I believe the story is so integral to defining the game mechanics. Alrighty, so here we are to the gameplay scrapbook page. First, I just want to talk about angle and looks. I love the zoom in of Batman here, especially when you're out of combat. That's likely going to be the perspective we want. This is going to be a third person RPG, Souls-like, maybe some roguelite elements. It is hopefully going to have a more fast-paced fighting style, almost similar to Smash Bros. I want it to be quick. I want it to be combo focused, more of almost a 1v1. And you could also think of games like For Honor as well. And then the last thing, in terms of exploration and movement, I want it to be like Warframe. When medieval sword fighting games come out, there's a lot of questions on if it's going to lean into realistic sword fighting tactics and everything like that, or if it's going to be all fantastical and all fake. I think typically a blend of both works best for the video game scene. And to summarize how we want to do it is we want it to be realistic sword fighting forms, but on steroids, as if you had super soldier knights, but still doing semi-realistic, historically accurate knights in terms of different positions, the weight and swinging techniques of a claymore versus a longsword, and everything else that comes with that. In the segment earlier, obviously I established that this is the king, the great forge master. One thing that's also very important is that he forged not only the varied earth and reality that Agathion knows, but also every weapon that an ambassador carries was forged by him. And with his spiritual, ethereal prowess, he not only fashioned the blade, but he can still fashion it even while an ambassador is in battle. To summarize it, it's sort of like Bluetooth blacksmithing. How that lore sets up the main mechanic is we are going to have 6 main weapon classes that the Forge Master can fashion your weapon into. So you really will only be carrying one weapon, but it can be hammered out into a different weapon at any given notice. Weapon switching is a huge thing in other video games. I'm not going to act like, oh, you can change your weapons, that's new. However, most games you either have to slow down the gameplay, pause the gameplay, or you can only switch to one other weapon during combat. And so the main way we want our game mechanic to be unique here is you not only have the option to switch your weapons repeatedly, but you are encouraged to. In fact, you will be the most lethal if you switch and know each weapon for its difference. But the point of that is to make combos longer lasting. I talked about how it's going to be similar to a fighting game in which you have different moves. From this perspective, I can't have 20 different swings on one weapon type. There's just not enough buttons on a controller. But if you can switch your weapon instantly for any given situation or even direction that an enemy is flying, then suddenly you have more equipment. And so how we're going to do that very quickly is similar to the Monado arts in Super Smash Bros. I'm a huge Smash Bros. Fan, but you hold down the button that makes each icon appear here, and then you can just scroll through them rapidly. The goal is we'll have a similar icon like this, pardon the crude illustration, will pop up and you'll be able to just select instantly with your joystick as to which weapon you want. And as long as your magic bar, we think we're going to call it a heat bar, has enough juice in it, then you're able to switch as many times as you need. Here's just a very general idea of what each weapon's strengths are. Like the battle axe is the slowest, but it also will do the most armor damage or smash a shield. You also have a one like the Falchion, which will be more of your knife, your blade. Think of the knives in Dune. It'll be very quick and little damage, but it'll also allow you to run the quickest when you're out of combat, and so you'll have a reason to switch to there. So that's the general idea, is you'll have 6 weapon classes, each with unique attacks and strengths and cons. And so it'll be up to the player to learn how to switch quickly, efficiently, and repeatedly.
quick example of what that'll look like. You run in quickly with Falchion. As you jump and get the most air because your Falchion is equipped, you switch into a battle axe, which you're able to do a downward strike, smashing the shield because the battle axe does the most armor/shield damage. And then you switch to your broadsword and you're able to do an upward slash that is then a cause damage. That's the general idea when it comes to the mechanics of the game, is that this will be a third-person, Souls-like RPG with a quick, fast, combo-focused fight style, such as Super Smash Bros. Or Street Fighter, with a movement based off of Warframe, all relying on a rapid weapon-switching game mechanic inspired by Shulk's Monado arts from Super Smash Bros. I hope that gave you guys a preview into the game we plan to create. In the next video, we'll be taking on character creation from the concept to the game engine. If you want to be part of this process, please consider subscribing and joining our Discord in the link below. We'll see you guys in the next video.